Good morning, afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another daily market update. Predominantly in this one, I want to be getting you guys ready for the week ahead. We've got the Federal Reserve coming out, expected to lower interest rates by 25 basis points, which many think isn't enough, given the kind of chokehold that the Fed has had over the markets. And that's really caused what I've been looking into a lot recently, this kind of idea or concept of a K-shaped economy, where you've seen certain sectors do well, but more broadly, things haven't due to sort of monetary conditions thrust on the economy to tame inflation, to throttle inflation. If you're throttling inflation, you're also going to throttle growth in certain areas. And that's how we've ended up in this K-shaped economy. So I think this is something, certainly as the year draws to a close, that I'm reflecting on very heavily, because really we've got the direction of markets very right. I'm a technical analyst. I knew the S&P was going to go up from 2022 onwards, along with Bitcoin and crypto broadly. It's done that. The context of how it's done that has not quite been what I expected. And really it's been, or what's really happened there is you've seen the S&P dragged up by effectively 7 stocks, or the sort of AI stocks and the stock market more broadly. CapEx would confirm that. The rest of the kind of economically perhaps more sensitive stocks really haven't done well at all. And actually, if you look at crypto, it's been a Bitcoin story, which is often typical in regards to how bull markets start. But we haven't got a generally supportive environment in the same way that we don't for small cap stocks, for altcoins just yet. And I will be talking to you guys about that a little bit in relation to the business cycle, what the Fed's next moves are as they're going to be coming out, and why this is just all so important to watch for markets. And then towards the end, I'm going to do something really interesting. Right now, I live in, or reside the majority of time in Scotland, a country that I love. I have Scottish ancestry. And it's very interesting. There was a clip that came out of Scottish Parliament in regards to evidence on digital assets, the Scotland bill. Now, the UK has just recognised crypto as property in certain areas, or they're at least acknowledging it. I saw this being paraded around X as if this was a great thing, and in some senses it is, in others it isn't. You are going to start getting taxed on it. Actually, I've got a release with a UK crypto tax specialist coming out for you guys this week. I know many of you aren't in the 5.5 million people that live in Scotland, very small country, but I want to play the clip towards the end because it's given by a professor, an individual with a PhD called, I think, William Buchanan. And he effectively is talking about just how impactful this technology is. And I really want to just stress that at the end because we're so early on that journey. And I think there is such an opportunity. People are going to look at us right now as the way that people look at boomers that got houses for a couple of grand, which isn't really fair because a couple of grand back there was probably what how money was relative, and it is relative. But yeah, a lot to get into. So I'll play that towards the end. If people want to watch it, they can. If they don't. I would recommend it. Let's just talk about where crypto currently is, where Bitcoin currently is. We are still in an uptrend, in my opinion, and I'm a lot more optimistic on 2026 than I think most are. But I think that has a lot to do with macro drivers. You had JP Morgan coming out a couple of weeks ago releasing a report saying crypto is now a macro asset. It's not just VC driven. Be careful with some of the narratives right now because I know they're VC backed. Crypto is no different to anything else. There's certain individuals that have been placed there, or I should say have been well funded to be in the media spotlight. I know a lot in regards to behind the curtain that I'm not willing to come out and publicly say because that's just not my... You know, if I thought there was a genuine bad actor and it was dangerous, then I would. But I think, c'est la vie, such is life, you know, in terms of there are actors out there that are well-funded. We're totally self-funded. That have been put in the space to very much control narratives, just like any other thing. In fact, I know there's a lot of mainstream media outlets out there that are actually sniffing around in regards to crypto channels at the moment. We think there's a positive 2026 coming. I mean, the Russell 2000, I'll come back to Bitcoin in just a second, it is, in my opinion, it's got a great run ahead of it. And I think this is in line with what the Fed's likely going to do, which we'll talk about. What that's going to do more broadly for this breadth in markets that we haven't seen. So far, it's been very concentrated. We've seen this kind of K-shape market or economy where it's been very concentrated at the top, and the rest's kind of struggled under one of the harshest economic Feds that we've had, or one of the harshest central bank regimes that we've had in a long time. Russell 2000 on the cusp of breaking out. This doing well, along with the S&P, which we think is now in a new bull market, having retraced its bear market earlier this year. It's on the cusp of breaking out. You can't, or I don't envision a future where crypto doesn't go along with that. Regardless of the 4-year cycles or things like this, which I think have largely been tilted out. I think really what's dampened, Bitcoin's done well along with AI stocks. But I think really what's dampened, and I think Bitcoin would have done better if we had had a better economic environment that we clearly haven't, based on the sort of business cycles and PMIs. So Bitcoin for us still remains in an uptrend. I am watching this short-term structure. It could very well lead to downside, and then we need to look at more broad trend invalidation. This could be a bit of a broadening structure. I don't think this is a flag. I've seen a few people trying to draw flags here. Broadening could be downside continuation. Bitcoin's got quite a lot to do in regards to its recovery. I'd like to see that going into the year. And then certainly I'd also like to see what comes out of the Federal Reserve's mouth. Is Jerome Powell going to sort of stick to his guns despite clear, evident cracks showing up? Talking about that, let's get you ready for the week ahead. Global week ahead. Fed's December decision to inform world central banks. The Federal Reserve is expected to cut rates this week, setting the scene for other central banks' final policy meetings for 2025. I think Bank of Canada and who's the other one? Australia, is it, that have rate decisions this week, along with the Fed. Swiss National Bank delivers policy update on Thursday, with the Bank of England and European Central Bank meeting on the 18th of December. The Bank of Japan also follows on the 19th. And people watching this because of the yen carry trade, which I think personally is going to be a nothing burger. That's my personal opinion. In fact, we had the unwind and markets have gone higher since then. Back last year, would have been sometime actually round about here when you had the yen. This was the last yen. I remember reporting on it, carry trade fears and sell-off. We kind of had a recent one. Certainly crypto did. The rest of the markets didn't on Monday, and I think that goes to show the lack of momentum behind it now. The markets will, in my opinion, they're going to climb this wall of worry. And people always looking for... I don't know why people want to be the ones that call the crash, because historically that's been an unprofitable business, Anyway, lot going on. The probabilities of the Fed lowering rates are well and truly in favour, only by 25 basis points. I don't think there's going to be any shocks in there. I think by sort of mid next year, you're probably looking at us about 3%. In fact, not even. So there's a very standoffish Fed. Of course, that is taking place on Wednesday. You do also have UK GDPs, minus 0.1. No surprises there. The Reserve Bank of Australia, they're going to hold rates, and so is the Bank of Canada. We'll see. What the Fed says after, for me, is going to be, in terms of forward guidance, the more interesting thing. And really, the Fed has totally stifled this business cycle. There's a cyclical nature to markets that has an underlying element to it that can be represented through the US ISM PMIs. And this is your cycle. And this is that K-shaped economy that I can actually just throw the S&P on and kind of represent to you here that I'm talking about. Yes, this isn't quite a great representation, but, you talk about a K-shaped economy, S&P, and generally the economic activity looks like this. And historically, you can see just how linked these are. Bitcoin very much linked. Certainly the altcoin sector extremely linked. If we throw, some of our favorites like Hedera on, Link perhaps, just to keep it simple, we'll just stick to the two. You can see the kind of lackluster, we won't do that, nature of this. We'll take Link off, or we'll take Hedera off. Let's get a longer chart on Hedera. You can see just how in sync these are. And ultimately, this is really what's stifled, I think, crypto. Is this, you can see just how in sync they are. And we haven't seen that breadth in markets because you've had a very restrictive Fed. This could all be about to end. We see the end of QT. We also might see the Fed look to get ahead of the curve, being the US 2-year yields, which have been significantly lower than the federal funds rate, suggesting that markets believe the Fed has got this wrong. The big question is, are the Fed going to get this wrong and be too tight for too long and cause issues, which they arguably already have or we're starting to see? It's a sad state of affairs, but really crypto, everything is looking towards the Fed and the money creators to effectively do what they're good at and continue to do that. There are signals that an easing's coming. One thing that's interesting in relation to the Fed funds rate and that coming down is, and I did this with my Patreon, so I'm not going to go all the way back, but I'll do a brief summary. The Fed lowering interest rates spurs on the economic business cycles. This is historically the case. Lowered interest rate, business cycle up. Lower interest rates, 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 business cycle up. We are entering that kind of a regime, and if there is such a correlation between the ISM and certainly altcoins, but more broadly, this represents the economy and economic growth, which markets do have a factor of. With them continuing to lower rates, this should alleviate or at least see growth in the business cycle. Thus, that breadth in markets that I'm very much expecting. I've done a lot on this, but effectively we've been in a K-shaped economy. It's been very concentrated in regards to the winners. The rest have been really surviving, including the altcoin sector, which needs a little bit more to it. Bitcoin's really stole the show due to the institutional bid. Altcoins will get that, but we need that breadth in markets, and we could be on the turning point for that. The question is, from us getting to that growth, does something happen? We'll see. What I want to finish on now is a very interesting clip from the Scottish Parliament. And this is talking effectively, we've got a professor here in front of sort of the Scottish Parliament, really outlining the impactful nature of crypto and what it's going to do. And he goes beyond finance. He talks about how Scotland used to be a home for asset management. And that's really, in terms of reputationally, been hit a fair few years ago. And now that seems to be coming back. But the need for nations to embrace this technology has never been so evident. And that makes me damn bullish. So a lot going on. We'll see how the week shapes up. Everybody, all eyes really are on the Federal Reserve now. And what they've signaled is coming should alleviate pressure on markets and stimulate growth. Are they going to get ahead of that, which is going to stimulate it even more? Or are they going to get behind it? Are they going to stay too tight that something breaks? There's a lot of unanswered questions, and we need to be observant when it comes to the markets. Ultimately, though, I've got this unbelievably bullish backdrop when it comes to the crypto space. Let's dive into this clip from the Scottish Parliament. I'll probably do a longer video on this if you guys want it, and then I'll love and leave you.
That's a significant worry that I have. So we see a lot of businesses in Scotland setting up that are asset managers. That is where the big growth area is just now. The commercial banks are doing well, but if you actually see in Edinburgh and Glasgow especially, there are a lot of asset managers going from the traditional that Scotland is a great place to do financial business, well trusted. We lost that reputation a little bit some decades ago, but it's really back again that this is a safe place to do business. It should be remembered there are 3 different types of tokens. The one we were talking about earlier is the payment token, the cryptocurrency. And I think this is trying to address cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin and Ethereum, but also stablecoins. So the big growth in the market just now, and the Bank of England is looking at stablecoins for a UK pound. It might come along. I think there's a very good chance. China certainly has a stablecoin, not for their day-to-day transactions. The citizens will never see these digital currencies, unlikely, but it's the transactions in wholesale, retail banking. The transfers between banks will now be done through a tokenised infrastructure. That is where Scotland can really bring an advantage, in that we can actually be a safe haven to be able to transfer between banks onto ledgers, typically now using stable coins. So the UK pound could be used as a currency to be able to transfer. So we also have utility tokens. So we're all used to going on a flight, and we now have a token in our wallet, which means that we can get an EasyJet flight. We show the QR code, it's digitally signed. The green passport was probably one of the greatest advancements in our society that we ever saw from a digital point of view, in that now you could show your vaccination record across Europe, and you could actually have a QR code which was signed by your GP or the NHS or something, and other countries accepted that digital signing. An amazing step forward. But where have we went since then? virtually nowhere. So this isn't just finance that we're dealing with. This is the opportunity to really properly tokenize our economy so that we can have digital tokens to say that we have the rights to do something. If we buy something, then we can actually have a proper receipt of the ownership of something and not some piece of paper. But the third type of token is probably the most significant for economic development, and that's a security token. And a security token is that if I have this cryptographic token, which is linked to a ledger in some way, and you trust that ledger, then I now own that asset. So how do I own my car? Because someone in the DVLC on a database has added my name onto it. That's a non-immutable ledger, by the way. Who owns the car when I sign a bit of paper and hand the car over to Peter while it's in the post? That's an old-fashioned system that's paper-based. And what we need to move towards is starting to look at security tokens that we can cryptographically prove that I have ownership of something. And that's a good thing because I have now the rights to be able to transfer it without having a third party acting on my behalf of transferring the car. I need the DVLC, say, to enable that. So I think if Scotland really wants to expand the opportunities in a tokenised world, it's the security tokens market that we need to look towards. And certainly that's the big growth in the market just now. But I don't think we should avoid the opportunities within stable coins and within cryptocurrency to be able to tokenise our financial infrastructure there too.
I want to play that. I know many of you live outside of the 5.5 million people within Scotland. Really, the reason I wanted to play that was because it really does just highlight that every nation is looking at this very seriously and as a way to gain advantages. And, you know, there's something really, these protocols are going to become standards in our day-to-day lives, far beyond finance. We're very early on that journey. That makes me extremely bullish, and we're really investing in the future, and that's what investing is all about. That's not financial advice, just my own opinion. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks for watching. See you in tomorrow's Daily Market Update.